There's a number most people carry in their head, a point where everything will feel different, stable, safe, free. Once that number is reached, the pressure lifts. But what actually happens when it arrives? When income covers life comfortably, savings feel solid, and survival is no longer the focus? The answer is more complex than most expect. Reaching financial security doesn't end the journey. It transforms it. New questions emerge. Different anxieties surface. A transition into unfamiliar territory. 1. The urgency disappears. The first shift is subtle. The edge softens, the grip loosens. Purchases no longer require mental calculations. Emergencies transform from catastrophic threats into manageable inconveniences. That constant low-level financial tension, the background noise beneath every decision, begins to fade. 2. Motivation changes shape. Before enough, motivation is survival-based, clear, urgent, non-negotiable. After enough, it becomes identity-based. And that's where things get interesting. The questions change. Do I actually enjoy this work? Would I still choose this path if money wasn't the pressure? What am I building now that survival isn't the goal? Ambition doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes quieter, more selective. The old motivators, fear, scarcity, urgency, were effective. Now, action requires meaning, and meaning is harder to define than survival ever was. 3. Lifestyle inflation becomes a choice. When money pressure drops, a new decision appears, one that didn't exist before: upgrade everything or protect the margin. Some people immediately expand. Bigger home, better car, nicer vacations. The income rises, and so does the baseline. Others hold steady. And in doing so, they realize something powerful. The freedom isn't in spending more. It's in needing less. When fixed costs stay low, options stay open. Walking away from something that no longer fits becomes possible. This is the fork in the road that determines whether enough stays enough or whether the number simply climbs higher. 4. Time becomes the real metric. After hitting enough money, the scoreboard shifts entirely. Success is no longer measured by income. The metric becomes control over time. Can you leave work at a reasonable hour without anxiety? Can you take a week off without financial fear shadowing the trip? Can you say no to a client or a commitment without consequences? Freedom begins to look less like luxury and more like optionality. The ability to choose, to pause, to redirect. Time becomes the currency that matters most. A higher-paying job that demands every waking hour becomes less appealing. A lower-stress role with flexibility becomes more valuable. The question is no longer, how much does it pay? But how much of my life does it cost? 5. Your circle may shift. Reaching financial stability can quietly change relationships in ways that are difficult to anticipate. Some conversations feel smaller, some comparisons fade, some ambitions no longer resonate. Not because anyone has outgrown anyone, but because the drivers have fundamentally changed. When survival was the shared bond, the struggle created connection. When survival is no longer the bond, alignment matters more. Values become the filter. Interests become the glue. Depth replaces proximity. Some relationships deepen, others drift. Financial security solves money problems, but it doesn't solve loneliness. 6. The fear doesn't fully disappear. Even after hitting enough, a new thought creeps in, quiet at first, then persistent. What if I lose it? The anxiety doesn't vanish, it transforms. Instead of fearing not having enough, the fear becomes losing what's been built. Financial peace requires systems, automated savings, diversified income, emergency buffers that actually exist. The fear doesn't disappear, it just becomes more manageable. And that, in itself, is progress. 7. The question of purpose gets louder. When money is no longer the main focus, something else takes its place. Meaning, contribution, growth, challenge. The questions buried beneath financial survival rise to the surface. What actually matters? What's worth building? What kind of impact is worth pursuing? Without financial pressure, clarity arrives. Sometimes unwelcome. You finally see what you actually care about. What energizes versus what drains. What feels aligned versus what feels obligatory. And that clarity can be uncomfortable, because now there's no excuse. The job that feels hollow? Harder to justify when bills aren't the issue. The project postponed for years? The delay can't be blamed on lack of resources anymore. Financial security removes the convenient excuse. It forces a confrontation with choice. Purpose becomes the new challenge. And unlike money, it can't be earned. It has to be discovered. 8. You realize enough was never about the number. Most people think enough is a financial milestone, a specific figure, a target to hit. But what changes when that number is reached isn't the bank account. It's the nervous system. Sleep comes easier. The 3 a.m. anxiety fades. Decisions feel calmer, less reactive, less desperate. Work becomes optional in mindset, even if not fully optional in reality. The knowledge that leaving is possible changes the entire dynamic. Enough money doesn't make life perfect, but it makes life lighter. The number itself was never the point. The point was always the feeling: security, stability, peace. And the realization, eventually, is this: enough isn't a destination. It's a state of mind that money can support, but not create on its own. After hitting enough, the real work begins. Not chasing more, not proving anything, not climbing higher for the sake of appearance, but designing a life that feels steady, intentional, aligned. Because wealth isn't about endless growth. It's about reaching a point where growth becomes a choice, not a compulsion. Where more is optional, not mandatory. Where the question shifts from, how much can I get, to, what do I actually want? That's the transition most people don't expect. And it's the one that matters most.